Hey guys, this is Dawson's Discussions, and my name is Nathan L. Dawson Jr. Today's date is June 20th, 2021. In this episode, I will be talking about the financial independence, retire early, and my perspectives on this socio-economic strategy and how I think it can actually help build black wealth in the United States of America. So stay tuned. Financial independence is the status of having enough income to pay for one's living expenses for the rest of one's life without having to be employed or dependent on others, whether family members, government, and/or charities. If a person can generate enough income to meet their needs from sources other than their primary income, then they have achieved financial independence. For example, if a 30-year-old has $2,000 in expenses per month and assets that generate $2,000 or more per month, then that 30-year-old have achieved financial independence. That 30-year-old no longer needs to work a regular job in order to pay for his bills or his or her bills. On the other hand, if, for example, a 50-year-old earns $1 million a month but have expenses that is $1,005,000 each month, then that 50-year-old is not financially independent, as that 50-year-old would have to earn the difference each month to make all their payments, in this case, $5,000. However, the effects of inflation must be considered. If a person needs $100 a month for living expenses today, they will then need $105 next year and $110.25 the following year to support the same lifestyle, assuming a 5% annual inflation rate for easy numbers. Therefore, if the person in the above example attains their passive income from a perpetuity, there will be a time where they will lose their financial independence status because of inflation. The financial independence, retire early, or FIRE, abbreviated, is a lifestyle movement with the goal of gaining financial independence and retiring early, well before the average retirement age of 65, through maximizing their savings or, investing rate, well above what society saves, by finding ways to increase income and or decrease expenses. Once a person reaches at least 25 times their annual expenses, they will typically withdraw 4% from their nest egg annually to make it last through their retirement years. While not all members of the FIRE movement embrace traditional retirement, the milestone of having reached FI, or financial independence, is the moment when the money they earn from their investments will pay for their expenses. So when they hit that tipping point, the choice to work or not to work is theirs to make, and they are in control on how they spend their time and their life. The United States Internal Revenue Service, the revenue service of the United States federal government, which is responsible for collecting taxes and administrating the Internal Revenue Code, which is the main body of federal statutory tax law, categorizes income as earned, portfolio, and passive income, and each income is taxed at a different percentage rate. 1. Earned income. Earned income is income gained where you trade your time and energy for money. Essentially, it's wage labor. For example, an accountant who works for a monthly paycheck receives active income. So salary, wages, gratuity or tips, commissions, which refer to fees earned by brokers and agents in making a sale or closing a deal, earnings from self-employment gig work, and disability payments through a private employer disability plan are examples of earned income. Earned income is the most highly taxed of all three types of income. People who earn income through a job, either as an employee or as a sole proprietor, can lose roughly up to 50% of their money through taxes. So you have your federal tax, state tax, FICA Social Security, FICA Medicare, and self-employment if applicable, depending on your tax bracket. Number 2, portfolio income. Portfolio income is made through the financial markets and capital gains. For example, when someone buys stock in a corporation at a given price, they plan on selling that same stock at a higher price in the future. So if they buy a stock at $10 today and the price goes up to $40, when they sell that stock, they make $30 in capital gains, and that capital gains is their profit. The same can actually be said when selling a piece of real estate. You could buy a house at $100,000 and the value then increased to $300,000, and you sell it, and then that $200,000 is the profit before taxes. Making money through portfolio income, at least in the short term, won't save you that much money in taxes either. Short-term gains only apply to assets held for a year or less and is taxed as ordinary income. But your long-term capital gains, which is taxed at 0%, 15%, and 20%, depending on your tax bracket. Portfolio income is subject to how the economy stock market is doing. Many people who were flipping houses in 2008 came to a rude awakening when the entire housing market collapsed nearly overnight. And because a house is a slowly liquidity asset, most can sell in time to recover their losses. Aside from capital gains, different types of portfolio income are dividend income, which is income from dividend paying stocks and dividend paying ETFs, and interest income, which is income from lending money or depositing your money in a bank. And number 3, passive income comes from 3 sources: rental activity, trade or business activities in which you do not materially participate in, and royalties. Taxes vary and can be very low. Cash flows from rental property income includes profits from ownership of capital, rent from ownership of resources such as rental income, cash flows from property or any piece of real estate. Number 2, trade or business activities in which one does not materially participate in during the year. A trade or business activity is an activity that involves the conduct of a trade or a business. That is, deductions would be allowable under Section 162 of the IRC Internal Revenue Code if other limitations, such as passive activity rules, didn't apply. Is conducted in anticipation of starting a trade or business, or involves research or experimental expenditures that are deductible under IRC Section 174, or that would be deductible if you choose to deduct rather than capitalize them. A trade or business activity doesn't include a rental activity or the rental of a property that is incidental to an activity or holding the property for investment. And lastly, number 3, royalties. Royalties are payments made by one company, which is the licensee, to another company or person, which is the licensor, for the right to use the latter's intellectual property, book, music, video, and etc., or patents. However, the IRS only considers royalties passive income when they are not derived in an ordinary course of a trade or business. And of course, the goal of Region FIRE is to develop multiple sources of residual income, which is portfolio income and passive income. So what are the origins of the FIRE movement? Well, in the year 1992, Vicki Robin and Joe Dominguez published a book, Your Money or Your Life: 9 Steps to Transform Your Relationship with Money and Achieving Financial Independence, which popularized the idea of achieving financial independence rather than spending the best days and years of your life working in a 9-to-5 to make money and to make ends meet. The core concept of that book is that most of us usually flow through life unknowingly exchanging our time for money. Time, as our most precious and scarce resource, is spent earning money so we can buy, clothes, a brand new car, a big house, going on vacations, and designer clothing and whatnot. So we're actually trading our life to buy things that really don't matter, or at least doesn't really appreciate in value, and or doesn't provide you a paycheck, which is income. So while Your Money or Your Life viewed the momentum as a grassroots movement, it wasn't until another 25 years until the FIRE movement actually took shape, which is the year 2017. So coming out of the Great Recession in 2010, an entire subset of people became disillusioned with the status quo. We've been sold the idea that life is expensive. As long as we work really hard, move up the corporate ladder, get promotions, clip coupons, trying to get discounts, and set aside a little bit of money for retirement, we will someday dig our way out of student and mortgage debt to enjoy a few brief years living life how we always wanted. So with the downturn in our economy, many people start to realize that the stories we've been fed simply weren't true. Our futures were being ruined by rampant consumerism and keeping up with the Joneses, and traditional financial advice did little to help us. So after retiring at the age of 30, Pete Adeni started a blog called Mr. Money Mustache to spread his ideas using a frugal lifestyle to buy back your freedom. There was nothing magic, deceptive, or lucky about his retirement story. He and his spouse simply saved over 60% of their incomes during their brief careers, and they both retired shortly before their first son was born. His blog gained momentum, and he built a dedicated following of readers, or mustachians, as he called it, with his artful writing and blunt observations about how we could all live a much happier life on less. The FIRE movement gained a de facto leader, and eventually it achieved mainstream attention. So the current FIRE community has expanded to include a wide array of writers, bloggers, and podcasters. We're just normal people. So, some of the most prominent books, and aside from Your Money, Your Life, is this book, Financial Freedom: A Proven Path to All the Money You Will Ever Need. This book came out February 5th, 2019, and was written by Grant Sabatier. It was that person. And you also have Quit Like a Millionaire: No Gimmicks, Luck, or Trust Fund Required by Christy Shin and Bryce Leong. Just this book. And of course, there are other books that I don't have that still talks about FIRE. You have Choose FI, Your Blueprint to Financial Independence by Chris Mamula, Brad Barrett, and Jonathan Mendonza. Came out October 2019. Playing with FIRE, Financial Independence, Retire Early. How Far Would You Go for Financial Freedom by Scott Rickens. Came out January 2019. And A Simple Path to Wealth, Your Roadmap to Financial Independence and a Rich, Free Life by J.L. Collins. And of course, honorable mentions would be Rich Dad, Poor Dad, what the rich teach their kids about money that the poor and middle class do not. Released by Robert T. Kiyosaki, 1997. Rich Dad's Cash Flow Quadrant, Guide to Financial Freedom, released in 2000. Rich Dad's Guide to Investing, What the Rich Invest in that the poor and middle class do not, also released in 2000. I Will Teach You to Be Rich, No Guilt, No Excuses, No BS, There's a 6-week program that works, second edition by Ramit Sethi, or Sethi. The second edition came out in May 2019. You also have The Millionaire Next Door, The Surprising Secrets of America's Wealthy, released in 1998. And you also have The 4-Hour Workweek, Escape the 9-to-5, Live Anywhere, and Join the New Rich, November 2009. Of course, there's also another book that I'm also going to eventually get my hands on, which is The Millionaire Fast Lane by MJ DeMarco. So essentially, we work hard to accumulate wealth over a 40-plus year career life. So after that, we are then free to enjoy our golden years with our family close by. Take that cruise, go to sports events every so often, visit your grandkids anytime you choose. This, they tell you, is how it's always been done. It's just the way how things are. But with the growth of FIRE gives you back your time, because time is more valuable than your money. So essentially, the world is designed to take your valuable time from you. Of course, we see it with, working, your typical 9-to-5 jobs. Just spend sitting in a long car ride, commuting in traffic with everybody else. It's been decompressing after a tough day at the office. Time is being spent like it's not the most valuable currency in your world. So essentially, the goal of financial independence is to give you your option to take back that time. To truly understand the FIRE movement, you also need to realize that our traditional views of retirement are out of date and is constantly changing. According to the data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, nearly 20% of people over 65 are still working, and that number is expected to grow. Not to mention increased technological unemployment, which is the loss of jobs caused by technological change. You have your automation, artificial intelligence, robotics, and algorithms. So how to become financially independent? It all comes down to your savings rate. Your savings rate is the amount of money you have remaining after spending money on taxes and other life expenses. It's a very powerful metric that can give you insight into whether you're on the fast track or on the slow track heading into retirement. So essentially, someone living paycheck to paycheck has a saving rate of 0%. But someone who makes $80,000 a year and saves $40,000 a year has a saving rate of $50,000. The higher the savings rate, the quicker you'll be able to reach financial independence. The lower your savings rate, the more likely is it that you'll spend decades trying to get there. So, the saving rate for the average American currently stands at 8%, which means it will take them 56 years to reach retirement. So, the harsh reality is if it takes 56 years to retire, it's likely you won't have much of a retirement to enjoy. So at a savings rate of 10%, 9 years of work will save you 1 year of living expenses. At a savings rate of 25%, 3 years of work to save for 1 year of living expenses. If you have a savings rate of 50%, 1 year of work to save for 1 year of living expenses. And at a savings rate of 75%, 4 months to work to save for 1 year of living expenses. So from the example that I just said a few seconds ago, it could be concluded that the time to retirement decreases significantly as your savings rate is increased. For this reason, those pursuing FI attempt to save at least 50% or more of their income. At a 75% savings rate, it would take less than 10 years of work to accumulate 25 times the annual living expenses suggested by the 4% safe withdrawal rule. So how much money do you need to be financially independent? If you want to figure out how much you need to have saved for retirement, first you need to know how much you spend each year. Then you take that number and you multiply it by 25. When you save that amount of money, you no longer need to work to pay for your expenses, as long as you follow that 4% withdrawal rule annually. And then you can live off that money earned by your investments. So the steps to FIRE. So essentially, you want to picture how your life would be if you didn't have to work a 9-to-5 job. What would you be doing? And for step 2, you want to calculate your net worth. Essentially, your net worth is the value of your assets minus the total of all your liabilities. So I define assets as any resource legally owned by a household that provides portfolio, financial markets, and or capital gains, income, and or passive income, which is real estate, rent, and business income profits. So for example, that would be cash on hand, the balance of your bank accounts, checking account, savings account, money market account, certificate of deposits, your retirement funds, 401k, IRA, TSP if you are a U.S. government employee, 457, which is, I think, if you're a state government employee, 403B if you work for a nonprofit, your brokerage account balance, your 529 account balance, your HSA, which is your health savings account, and also other items of value like the market value of your houses, whether your residence and your rental properties, gold, silver, cryptocurrency, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and your brokerage account, going back to it, and options, futures, and also the value of your business, if you know how to value your business. And then you have your liabilities. I define liabilities as financial obligations and debts that a household owes to another entity. Or 2, it could be a non-performing asset that is not cash flowing and or appreciating in market value. So example for 1 would be student loans, consumer debt, installment loans for consumption, car loans, given that your car loan is not used for a business purpose. Like a very expensive car. But again, if you do have a business, and then if you use your car for business purposes, then it would be considered an asset, because your car, and if you hire somebody else to drive that car for like a small rental, not really a small rental business, but a small ride share, like you actually have your own small rental car company, then somebody would drive that car and then it would pay you. So that's actually an asset. But of course, if you just drive it just for like consumption purposes, and then when you drive it doesn't pay you, or if your car just sits there and then it just doesn't pay you, you kind of know what I mean by passive. And of course, mortgages. A mortgage is good debt, but that's usually say a mortgage for your home is kind of a liability, because your home is not paying you money. But then again, that's a video for another subject. But anyway, you have your mortgages, small business loan, unpaid taxes, and of course, if you're really wealthy, and then if you get sued, then you also have to pay restitution to that person if you're found guilty. And then that's actually what I call a contingent liability. And then again, for number 2, for a non-performing asset, saying like if you have a rental property, and then if it's in a distressed area, and then nobody is, and you don't have a tenant, then again, it's costing you money. Or if you're trying to sell for a capital gain, then it's not appreciating. Then of course it's a liability. Same thing if you have like business, and then your business isn't profiting, it's actually costing you money, and then that would also be a liability. Anyways, of course you want to figure out how much you spend versus save. So you want to know like where your money is going. Of course, we are usually shocked to see how much we spend on daily expenses like food, housing, and transportation. Of course, you could do it on paper or use an online software like Mint. You need a budget or personnel capital. And then what you want to do next is you want to reduce your big three: housing, transportation, and food. So for housing, find a roommate or downsize to a smaller house. Transportation, buy a used car or sell your car and then just take public transit to work. And 3, for food, cook all your meals at home and try to limit eating out. Combine these changes could potentially increase your savings rate by 30%, if not more. Then you want to make your savings work for you. Every minute that your money is sitting in a bank account, you're missing an opportunity to make it work for you. The average interest yield on a savings account is usually less than 1%. Even in a good economy, a high yield savings account is usually 2%. But then again, inflation sits at 3%. So essentially, you're losing money. So essentially, it's best for you to keep not a whole lot of your money in your checking account and your emergency savings. And then you want to increase your income. Extra income equals fire faster. Many flyer bloggers have found ways to earn extra money from ads, tools, affiliated marketing links, and side hustling, like gig work. So while earning more money isn't necessary, most people on the fire journey will eventually focus on growing their income in order to increase their savings rate once they run out of expenses to cut. Okay, fire variations. But fire is so much more than budgeting, investments, and or math equations. Fire is just a way of life and a growing movement that is being spread across the globe and being embraced. Not because people suddenly love budgeting and personal finance, but because fire provides hope. The truth is that the definition is all relative. Because everyone has different individual goals, there is not one exact answer. However, the underlying theme is the same for everyone. Financial independence is building the life that you want to live and then saving for it. So with this in mind, there are actually 5 variations of FIRE or financial independence. So number 1, regular FIRE. Regular FI is having enough investments that can cover your expenses associated with your current lifestyle. This is synonymous with traditional retirement and is the most commonly referenced type of financial independence. Upon having enough assets to be regular FI, you would be able to quit your job and enjoy the same level of spending that you have today. This means be able to cover your essential expenses, housing, food, utilities, and insurance, and discretionary categories, vacations, money to buy gifts, and other recreational activities. So reaching FI is commonly cited as having a nest egg of 25 times your annual expenses. So if your expenses are about $60,000 a year, then you would need approximately $1.5 million, because 60,000 times 25 is about 1.5 million in order to reach FI. And of course, that number comes from what is known as the 4% rule, which is based on the Trinity study. So that 4% rule tells people that we can safely withdraw 4% of our investments every year, adjusted for inflation, and we will never run out of money. A couple of things to note is that the study is intended to see if a person's portfolio could last for at least 30 years. The person who will live solely by withdrawing 4% of their portfolio, just for inflation every year. So success was primarily judged by whether the person ran out of money or not during that time. Of course, just like how I said, you have to take into consideration inflation, because inflation, healthy inflation by the Federal Reserve System is usually 3.2% annually. So number 2, lean FI. Lean FI is having enough investments that can cover essential expenses. Essential expenses include budget line items like housing, food, utilities, and insurance. So think of lean FI as providing a basic safety net. As an example, if someone who was to lean FI were to get laid off, then they will have no problem meeting their basic budgetary obligations: food, housing, utilities, and insurance. However, they just might not have enough money for leftovers to spend on discretionary budget items, vacations, entertainment, and gift giving. The individuals who pursue lean FI are usually frugal and minimalist by nature. This enables them to require an overall smaller investment portfolio because of their natural tendency to spend less money. So with traditional FI, you calculate your yearly expenses, including the needs, housing, food, transportation, healthcare, insurance, and etc., and the wants, travel, hobbies, entertainment, and luxurious purchases. You don't calculate a life of luxury at retirement, but you also don't calculate one in which you live on a small budget. More or less, you are trying to maintain a standard of living that corresponds with the median cost of the living for the area you wish to retire in. With lean FI, you still need to calculate your yearly needs, but your wants will probably be much less. Basically, lean FI gives you a lifestyle that covers all your needs plus a few of your wants. This could be because you're already living in a minimalist lifestyle, or you want to do so at your retirement years, which could mean that your needs and your wants are going to be small. Another common reason is that you want to reach FI sooner, so you're willing to compromise some of your wants. Number 3, fat FI. Fat FI is having enough investments that can cover your expenses associated with a higher standard of living than your current lifestyle. So fat FI is for people who want to reach early retirement, but they're going to have a larger yearly budget and or higher expenses. So instead of having a very small nest egg, or at least small monthly expenses, you'll probably be looking at living expenses of at least 6 figures. Many in this category are high earners and have a higher income at their disposal to live with larger expenses. Think of this as FIRE amplified. When you reach FI and or RE, but you also want to live a little bit more luxurious. There are, of course, a variety of reasons why someone who wants to pursue this path want to have more discretionary funds later. You want to travel more, buy more luxurious items. You want to fly first class all the time. Or 2, though, of course, some would say it's probably that stereotypical greed, but also at the same time, it's kind of smart because you also want to mitigate your financial risk associated with market volatility and to beat inflation. So this type of financial independence is the one that will probably take the longest to achieve, but once you achieve it, it will enable the greatest financial flexibility down the road, at least for the mitigating financial risk associated with market volatility. Number 4, barista FI. Barista FI is defined as having enough money to retire early while using a part-time job for additional income and health insurance. Barista FI is when you aim to retire early with enough money invested at the 4% rule only covers a part of your yearly expenses. You will then switch to a part-time job to provide you with health insurance and cover your additional expenses. Barista FI got its name from Starbucks because Starbucks offer healthcare to its part-time employees. So many people saw that as an opportunity to switch to a part-time role while keeping their health insurance. This type of FI appeals to many people because you don't have to save up as much money. Barista FI allows you to switch to a part-time job much earlier and not wait until you have accumulated 25 times your yearly expenses. This eliminates the need to work full-time, so no more than a 40-plus hour work week to live your specific lifestyle. Instead of working in a corporate environment, you can actually work at a coffee shop, take part in a gig economy, or work somewhere for limited hours a week. The advantages of not working, the advantages are not working yourself to death to hopefully achieve FI. Then you can obtain some level of financial independence faster and potentially get some health coverage you won't fully be paying out of pocket for. So this is also an option for those who maybe aren't so sure about retirement, but they just want to test it out for a little bit. Essentially, barista FI is more of a middle ground between being fully FIRE and not FIRE. So barista FI refers to the point in which you only have enough investments to cover your needs, but you continue to work to cover your wants. This variation might be appealing to you if you see yourself always working in some capacity and never truly retired. Actually, a big proportion of those who already achieve FI continue to work afterwards anyway. Some go into part-time work and some their own adventure. The difference is that they can now do it on their terms. And number 5, Coast FI. Coast FI is a much more obscure concept obscure concept in the FIRE community. It refers to saving enough to coast to financial independence. It occurs when you save enough of a nest egg to compound and grow on its own to reach financial independence by your target age, without you having to invest another cent. They saved enough money while they were young to coast their way to financial independence and retirement early. No more monthly savings are required. But because you want to let go of the pedal for a little bit, you wanted to coast. So those pursuing coast FI usually have a high savings rate during the initial years, saving and investing in the vicinity of 60% of or more of their after-tax income. So by reaching coast FI, you can then stop saving and investing, which opens up options such as enjoying more of your money in the present, changing jobs to one that might pay less, but you still might enjoy more, switching to working part-time, or a combination of any of them. So essentially, you're making $100,000 for many years, and you save and invest $60,000 of it. By reaching coast FI, you no longer need to save and invest, so now you just find yourself with $60,000 a year to do whatever you want with it. Open up all those options. And there you have it, the 5 different variations of FI. As you learn, FI doesn't really have to be a one-size-fits-all for all types of people. You can just make it work for your specific situation and goals in life. At the end of the day, the whole point of FI is to have options and to buy back your time. And of course, well, ultimately, your freedom from not have to work a 9-to-5 job. And of course, you can also make the decisions that work best for you and your life and for your family. Okay, what is the criticism of FIRE? Of course, not everything is perfect, and every single idea out there will always have its criticism. So, one of the criticism is they say that the FIRE movement is only for the rich because they point out at the difficulties of achieving the high savings rate needed for FIRE on a low income. Number 2, they usually say that the FIRE movement is comprised of only white men, notion that highlights the fact that men are overly represented in the media coverage of the FIRE movement. But as a black person myself, there are quite a few black FIRE practitioners I know of. Well, not personally, but at least I see them on YouTube. Our Rich Journey, Rich and Regular, Black Married Debt Free, His Her Money, Urban Finance, Learn, Hustle, and Grow, and a few others. I'll probably list their channels in the description. And finally, some argue that early retirees are not saving enough for early retirement, and the many unknowns that come with a longer time period. Because of the retirement phase of FIRE could potentially last for 70 years, critics say that is inappropriate to apply the 4% rule, which was developed for a traditional retirement time frame of 30 years. For that reason, economist Kirsten Jeske argues for a safe withdrawal rate of 3.5% or less, which means saving 30 to 40% times of your annual spending instead of the regular 25 times your annual expenses, which is if you have the goal to retire completely and never earn money again. And of course, those are criticisms of the FIRE movement whenever it is brought up in the media. So how did I come across FIRE? Well, it all started in 2014, at least my story with money and how I managed my money. I didn't really have a serious budget and wasn't really paying myself first outside of my retirement account. My retirement account is the TSP through savings plan. I only contributed 1% of my pay for retirement when I signed up for it. So I spent money on frivolous things and I had outstanding credit card debt. The reason why I actually got a credit card was because, common wisdom said that, I needed a credit card to build credit. So my parents, they told me like, hey, you need to get a credit card. So, I got a credit card. Of course, when I first applied for the credit card and me now looking back at it, I kind of wonder why they gave me a very large balance. So they gave me a credit card balance of $7,000, and I think they automatically raised my limit to $7,500. I didn't want them to for obvious reasons. I then deployed in 2016. Made some deployments when I was deployed, but then again, I was visiting different countries. So again, I was using my credit card. Again, back to spending. Got back from deployment that year, and I was making minimal payments whenever I could. Again, I kept still spending. Late fees were tacking on. when I was missing payments, and the interest was 12% to 14%. And of course, I didn't really like that. And of course, my spending was out of control, so I paid the minimum balance, and then with the minimum balance, I spend it again. We're just going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So I knew I needed to make a little bit more money. So then I signed up for Uber Eats. They're on the weekends. And then I was on deployment again from 2018 to 2019, trying to find ways how to make more money and then trying to increase my financial literacy. So I looked up articles and whatnot while I was deployed. When I got back, I received orders to go to Norfolk, Virginia, sign up with Grubhub. Again, I was still making minimal payments whenever I can, but for the life of me, I kept charging my credit card for, frivolous things or things that I really didn't need. So I was on social media and I wanted to know like how did wealthy people actually did it. So I came across Robert T. Kiyosaki, and I saw some of his financial literacy tips on IG, and I saw other financial literacy pages on IG. Okay, so and then I still and then I got the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, which is this book. Essentially, it changed my outlook on money, and I just obsessed myself on how to require assets on my military pay. Then, of course, I got this book, Financial Freedom, A Proven Path to All the Money You Ever Need, came out February 2019. And then, of course, I resonated with the author because he was a millennial, just like I am. I was born in 94. And I found myself in the same situation as he was in. I think he said that, according to this book, it's a memoir. Actually, both these two books, they're memoirs. He actually started with $2.26, and he became a millionaire within 5 years. Then after that, I stopped driving for Uber Eats because of the pay wasn't as competitive as Grubhub, but with Grubhub, I was making much more money than I did with Uber Eats. And also the lack of trip overview as compared to Grubhub, because at that time, Uber Eats, I would just pick up the order and then it'll tell me where I have to go next. And then sometimes it'll take me to another side of the county, but here where I actually at, there's actually a toll, and then of course, if I'm really busy, then that toll would actually pile up, and it's going to eat up my profits. But the other thing, what I did was I had to drive around the toll, which was going to take even longer, and then the customer would probably downvote me. And then with that, I actually got fed up with Uber Eats, and then I switched over to Grubhub, and then Grubhub actually tells me, okay, I'm going to pick the food here, and then you're going to drop it off here. And then before I even accept it, I'll be able to know where I'll be driving. And then if I say, okay, I do want to drive that path, then I will accept the order. And then moments later, the COVID-19 pandemic hit. Then I actually got this book. I Will Teach You to Be Rich. No guilt, no excuses, no BS. There's a 6 week plan, or a 6 week program that works, second edition by Ramit Sethi. Came out in May 2019. So I actually read it, and it literally gave me the courage to open up a high yield savings account, fund that savings account for my emergency fund by actually setting up a pay allotment. I actually want to take some of my post-tax income, and then actually have money automatically going over to that same emergency. It was actually my emergency account, but it's actually a different bank instead of my everyday bank. Also, convinced me to automate paying my bills through my bank's bill pay feature and automate my contributions to my investment accounts instead of manually investing. And actually gave me the courage to negotiate for a lower interest rate on my credit card that I was telling you about earlier with my creditor. And it literally convinced me to open up a Roth IRA for retirement alongside my TSP. And then the stock market had a dip in March 2020. And then a month later, I opened up a Fidelity Go robo-advisor account, invested some money for just general wealth building, just for me to keep contributing, and then it's going to compound interest. Then of course I bought some more books on real estate. I have a few bigger pockets, real estate books, business books, just business books, and of course stock market investing books, and of course more fire memoirs. Because I have this one, and then I have Quit Like a Millionaire. And then again with that, I then watch a whole lot of fire videos, just like how I told you earlier. One of the videos that I actually took a whole lot of inspiration from, and I actually watched a whole lot up until just recording, was Our Rich Journey. And then I watched videos done by Robert Kiyosaki, real estate, taxes, financial literacy. And then this is how I actually came across Warren Buffett. And then I came across Jack Bogle. Jack Bogle, he created a company, Vanguard, which actually most fire practitioners, they know through VTSAX, which is the Total Stock Market Index Fund. So I was really hip with the index funds because it was just a common man's way to invest in the stock market instead of you just picking and choosing your individual stocks. So why do I choose to pursue FIRE? So, well, one of the reasons is to buy back my time. Again, I came across Robert T. Kiyosaki and saw some of his financial literacy tips on Instagram, or at least other people who posted his, his picture, and then there'll be a picture of him, and then there'll be like some of his takeaways from his book. And then, of course, when I saw it, then, I went to Barnes & Noble, and then I got this book. And then, of course, it changed my outlook on money, and I just obsessed myself on trying to, how can I acquire assets? Because I think, one time, I think you said, wealth is actually how long you can survive on liquid assets without working for a paycheck, wage income, or earned income. Throughout this whole entire time, I literally thought that being rich was just the dollar amount. Okay, if you have this dollar amount, then you will be rich. But then again, didn't really take into consideration wealthy and not having to work, which is, can you really live off that $1 million? So if you have $1 million and you don't have an asset that gives you $1 million year after year, and then you spend up that $1 million, then you're no longer a millionaire, because you need to keep that million, or at least keep some of it, and then grow it. And of course, there's also another thing which I like to call the 40th to the 4th power, meaning that you have to work 40 hours a week, tax up to 40% of your gross pay, work for 40 hours. Work for 40 hours a week, tax up to 40% of your gross pay, work for 40 years of your life, and obviously number 4, retire on 40% of what you couldn't afford to live off of. And then, of course, after doing just a little bit of soul searching, it wasn't really for me. So with FI, I can actually spend more of my time left over with my family, make new friends if I can, mentor some people on finances if they want to learn about it, running my businesses, running my rental properties, pay much more close attention to my financial market investments, financial market stock, bonds, mutual funds, and etc. And of course, being a loyal customer to Black-owned businesses and promoting them more on social media. Another reason is that it's a little bit daunting for my fellow Black people, but the median Black wealth in the United States is heading to zero by the 2050s. And of course, I wanted to take what I know about the FIRE movement and then actually take my knowledge and then promote it to that median that's actually heading down to zero. Because again, we don't have a whole lot of financial literacy and community unity as compared to our non-Black American counterparts. And of course, there were also socio-economic policies that prevented the previous Black generations from building wealth. Jim Crow, denial of the Social Security benefits, denial of the 40 acres and a mule, denial of the GI Bill. Of course, my great-great-grandfather was denied because he was a World War II Army draftee. He was Black, drafted in 1943, served until 1945. And he lived in Arkansas, and Arkansas, that's down south. Because, Jim Crow was rampant down south, and of course, redlining. And then, of course, all those other socioeconomic policies that depowered the Black community. And also, a good paying career isn't guaranteed in this century anymore, and especially in the future. McKinsey reports say that African Americans and the 13th community archetypes that they analyzed may have a higher rate of job displacement than workers in other segments of the U.S. population due to rising automation and artificial intelligence. Again, a small share of the net projected job growth between now and 2030. By 2030, the employment outlook for African Americans, especially the men, the younger workers between ages 18 and 35, and those without a college degree may worsen dramatically. Again, I'll probably leave a link in the description about that study. And again, technological unemployment is the loss of jobs caused by technological change, automation, artificial intelligence, also known as AI, robotics, and algorithms will be booming from now all the way up until, I guess, the end of human life. Again, I don't have a crystal ball because I don't know the direction, but I think we actually have been peaked in our technological advances. Well, I don't know. Anyway, so the STEAM fields will always be in demand. Of course, you probably may have heard of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. But I want to throw in the letter A, STEAM. Science, technology, engineering, art. Art being a visual performing arts. Say, for instance, meme creations. Because, I think I do see the opportunity in getting paid if you make memes. Independent cinema. You see comedy skits on YouTube. I follow some content creators. Also, you can actually create your own comic book. Because, DC and Marvel, they kind of rule the superhero or lead the superhero comics, but you can actually create your own character, and then you could be a comic book writer. Same thing with like Hollywood. A whole lot of people are a little frustrated with Hollywood due to like the direction it's going with the movies, saying like, no, it's not adapted enough, or they shouldn't use that actor or the actress. But you can actually be a independent movie director, and then you can actually create your own series. Again, kind of going back to being a content creator, but a little bit more on the larger scale. And of course, mathematics, data analytics and whatnot. And again, I'm pursuing FIRE, lastly, because I want to give my descendants and lineage and a inheritance for them to live off of and grow off of, to at least give them a cushion, because I really didn't want it to be like I don't want them to like start from scratch, like that. So essentially, I want to be that catalyst of starting the wealth building process from my generation going forward in my family tree, and then I want my my son, grandchildren, great grandchildren, great grandchildren, etc., to pick up on, and for them to pick up on it and then enhance it, and then just going to keep going, just like that. So what is my FIRE path? I'm actually following a personalized hybrid FIRE for myself. So I'm actually going to combine the best of all worlds of the FIRE strategies, minus Coast FIRE. The reason I'm excluding Coast FIRE because I still plan to save and invest into my nest egg, even when I do hit my FIRE goals, for inflation purposes and downside market protection, mostly, of course, for generational wealth transfer. But then again, anything can happen that can actually make me go against my plan. I just might change my mind because due to unforeseen events that are probably out of my control. But I'm gonna try my best to stick with it. So like I said, I'm gonna do a hybridized FI or a FIRE plan. So the core will be regular FIRE because I know for sure that I want to be completely minimalist or completely lean, because I don't think I can actually be completely minimalist or completely lean that way. But then again, the amount of my nest egg is going to be fat FIRE for some leeway, because I do want to travel the world a little bit more often than I could now. I can actually pay more for gratuity. For those who don't know, gratuity is tipping. So if you have like a waiter, and then usually you might tip like $5 or $10. But if I'm fat FIRE, then I actually tip 20, 30, 40, maybe even $50, maybe even $100. I can actually give to charity. I can actually invest some of my money to my children's trust and custodial accounts when I have children. Again, that generational wealth transfer. And then, of course, I might again, splurge. I'm getting that ocean view suite every so often. Better hotels on vacations every so often. Maybe fly first class, because I never flown first class before, but I might do so every so often. But then again, I'm not really going to be a hyper consumer, unlike the lean flyer, because again, I want to buy a mansion and live in it. Of course, with fat flyer, I do have the money, but I wouldn't want to live in a mansion. Same thing, I wouldn't buy a Ferrari or a Lamborghini or a Bugatti or any luxury sports car. Again, like any Nissan Maxima or a Nissan Altima or a Honda Accord or a Honda Civic, or kind of like a full size car, or maybe a Toyota Corolla or Toyota Camry would be just fine. Maybe a small SUV like a Nissan Rogue or a Nissan Murano or Honda CR-V or a Toyota RAV4. I wouldn't drive anything like too luxurious. I would have the money, but I wouldn't. It's kind of weird between why I want to do fat fire for some things, but I want to be lean on a few things. And of course, I would still have I would have a side part-time job, because again, I do Grubhub, so I wouldn't quit that completely. Again, cool thing about being self-employed is I could do the job and then stop anytime I want to. So I would still be barista, which means I'll be my own gig worker or my own side hustler, like a side job that doesn't really seem to be like a main career. Like I'd actually get promoted, but I can actually still serve my local community that I'm currently with. Okay, what's my plan to reach fire? My next egg goal is to reach at least $1 million for a regular fire, and then I will grow my egg for a fat fire. It's going to be at least 3 times that amount. So it's going to be $3 million that I ultimately want to reach for fat fire. Then I reach fat fire, and then I'm still going to grow it, because again, wealth is supposed to grow. It's not supposed to stay static. It's supposed to grow in order for me to outpace inflation and for overall economic and market downturns. And of course, I still have some money to create trust funds and custodial accounts for my sons, daughters, grandsons, granddaughters, and future descendants. So they'll actually have a leg up. So again, what am I going to do? It's going to comprise of a combination of small businesses. I'm looking to e-commerce, owning vending machines, ATMs, buy up some local restaurants, laundromats, car washes. I might get into franchising, not too entirely sure, and then scale my small businesses. Keep up with my automated financial market investments, robo-advisors for my midterm planning and long-term investing, like my Fidelity Go account for long-term investing. Stick with my dividend payer, trying to get a dividend income source coming in. I'm going to get into real estate, single family, multifamily, crowdfunded deals through Fundrise. I did a video of Fundrise before, somewhere in my channel. Also, I might dabble into tax liens, mortgage notes, probably see how that turn out. And of course, I'm going to continue to invest in tech-based startups. At the time of this recording, I have 2 investments in startups: Dollarite, which is a transportation company, and 2 Choose Health, which is a health startup. And then eventually I will give some of my money away. As I said before, I'm not a part of a church, and I'm not religious myself. I'm not part of a religious institution, so I don't tithe to churches. I would just tithe I don't tithe to churches, but I would just give charity to secular organizations. And again, I'll be able to tip more than usual. Tip, gratuity. Like if I have a server and then sending me tipping like the usual, for after $10, I can actually tip 20, 30, 40, 50, maybe 100, 110 bucks. Who knows? And of course, with all this money, then I'll be able to ultimately give back to the Black community, which means I'll be taking some of that money and then investing to the Black community. As in, I'll be able to hire any Black people who have a felony, and then if they can't just get a job because they're a felony, then I would waive that and then just hire them so to be able to put food on the table for their kids, and then of course teach financial literacy like that. And of course, that's the end of this video. My name is Nathan L. Dawson Jr., and this is Dawson Discussions. Take care and have a nice day.